Hi everyone, it's great to see you all again, and I hope you are all well and enjoying the sunshine. I thought it'd be good for us to meet today and have a chance to go through P3 and everything that we need to do to get P3 done and dusted. Now, before we get started, a couple of things. I've marked, I think, all but 2 of your M2 tasks, and they've looked very good so far. So those of you who haven't quite got it in, make sure you get that to me as soon as you possibly can. If you want to make any amendments to that, you're going to need to make sure they are in red so I can see what has changed. But I think overall, the quality of what you've produced has actually been really, really quite good. So I'm incredibly happy with that. So far so good. If you're struggling with M2, just make sure that you watch the YouTube videos that are there to help you. It took me hours and hours and lots of pain to put those there, and it should be that if you've been through all of them and taken notes, you should have a really good idea. Equally, the last live stream that I did, the M2 final countdown, that really is the absolute bare minimum of what you need to do. So that 40-minute session is quite a long video, but if you go through all of that, there should be everything that you need to do. Right, before we go any further, let's see who we've got here. Would you please introduce yourselves in the comments, say hello so I know who I'm talking to. It's always good to get a bit of engagement with people who are here. We've made it as far as Tuesday, so say hello in the comments, let me know that you're there, and then we can crack on and have a look at P3. Hi Josh, hi Elliot, hi Aaron. I looked at all of your work and it was really good. I do want to say, by the way, if I gave you some feedback and you thought, oh blimey, I can't believe he's picked all these things out. A, I am a fussy person, but B, you all put in a huge amount of work. Tilly, hello. Keanu, hello. How are you? Anushka, nice to see you, and Jamie as well. Hello guys. So what I'm going to do is crack on. So I think I looked at nearly all of your work. Hamza, hi, how are you? Yes, I got through yours. Hamza, let me know if the feedback I've given you makes sense. So here we are. P3. You'll be delighted to know that P3 is an awful lot easier than M2 and P2. And I'm not just saying that. You have genuinely done the most difficult part of this course so far. Oh, sorry, not Hamza, it's Hamad who's... Hi, Hamad, it was your work I was looking at. I hadn't looked at yours, Hamza. There were 2 people I hadn't looked at. Hamad I'd seen, yeah. Okay, let me know, because my feedback always makes sense inside my head. Don't be afraid to come back to me and say, what do you mean? Because we don't have the benefit of me sort of being face-to-face with you and giving you feedback. So don't just accept it. Look at it. If you don't understand, email me, and I'm more than happy to go through it with you and to run over the things you're struggling with. All right, so that is M2. But just to say, if you do make any amendments, put them in red, because these documents run to 10, 15, 16 pages, and it makes it so much easier for me if you just put it in red. All right. So let's run through what we need to do today. Application design diagrams. This from the specification illustrate the requirements, functioning and designs of an application solution using diagrams. And as is ever the case, these sort of, while what you need to do is encompassed within that statement, it doesn't really help a huge amount. Jamil, that's who Keanu is. I'm trying to remember. Had a look at yours, Jamil. That was good. There's a lot of good work there, a lot of excellent work there. And what's pleasing me is how much you understood M2. And I'm always glad when the work comes in and I think, yes, they've watched the videos, they understand it, they've taken notes, they get nearly all of it. And actually, I know I'm talking about M2 again, most of you understood the operational side of things really easily. So that was also a huge bonus there. Right, so that's what's required. Let's go on to the next thing and look at this is the detail from page 8 of the spec. Provide a series of annotated diagrams. That's going to be 4 diagrams in total that describe their proposed application design. Don't forget, this is the design that you are creating for Justin. And you need diagrams to show these areas: functional requirements, processes, data handling, and user interface design. And what I'm going to do today is describe the different diagram that you need to produce for each of these. Although, to be fair, in terms of data handling, there are 4 different diagrams that you could produce, but I'm going to show you the one that's probably the most useful to you and would be the most useful to you after you finish school and go into work. So evidence will be the annotated diagram. So they want to see the diagrams, but they want to see a little bit of annotation so you can show what the diagram actually is showing Justin, if you like, is showing the client. All right. So the next thing we're going to look at is different areas of the design process. So diagrams. You might be wondering, why can't I just show one diagram? But of course, no one diagram can tell you absolutely everything that you need to know. If you think about the Gantt chart, you produced basically a schedule diagram. It simply showed how long the different tasks would take. So you're going to look at this problem through different lenses, and that's looking at it from different perspective in different ways to examine your project. Why do you do that? Because you want to show different aspects of your subject. So you might be showing how the data is flowing rather than what the people are doing, or you might be showing the processes happening rather than showing what the final product will look like. So you've got a diagram that can work for each of these. It allows you to test your subject against given criteria, and it means that you're less likely to take an issue or a problem into production, and once you start the production process, to then change your mind, it's incredibly expensive. So that's what everyone's keen to avoid. And also, going back to what we did in P2, it's making sure the client understands what it is that you are making for him, but also that means he can't back out and not pay you at the end of the day, which is something that happens quite a lot when you get to the end of the process and you're waiting for your money and the client says, no, that's not what I asked for. That's what you need to avoid. And that's what this kind of preparedness through different diagrams, looking at the problem in different ways, actually manages to achieve for you. So these are the 4 different diagrams. This is an important piece of information here. And this is at the top level inside your brain. Try to remember that this is what each of these different diagrams I'm going to cover today actually shows. So functional requirements, we're going to look at a use case diagram. It's the phrase use case diagram is more complex than the diagram itself. Once I show you the diagram, you'll go, oh, okay, I get that. It's quite straightforward. The processes will be a flow chart. If you did computer science last year, you'll have come across flowcharts, because solving pseudocode problems, flowcharts are one of the ways that you can do it. And you may have come across flowcharts anyway. I've got a feeling those of you who did IT, GCSE last year, or Cambridge Nationals would also have come across flowcharts rather. Then we're going to do data handling, and that's about the individual bits of data and how they move around the system. And that will be done using a data flow diagram. I imagine that will be completely new to you, but it's not tricky. It's just a new discipline to learn what the boxes are, how you lay it out, what goes into the diagram. It's not particularly difficult, but it will be new to you. And then we've got the user interface diagram, which is a wireframe. And a wireframe is like a mock-up to show what the final product will look like. It doesn't have to work, and in your case it won't work. It'll just be a mock-up that you could put together in PowerPoint. And when I come to that one, I'll mention to you how a bit of time invested there could make life a bit easier for you later on down the line. So that's the story so far. I'm going to kick off with a use case diagram. Now, in a nutshell, this is what it looks like. Okay, so that's the sort of thing that you're going to end up making. And all you need to do is produce a diagram a bit like this. Obviously, that's the wrong subject. And you've got arrows pointing to different elements, to different processes. So let's have a look at this now and see what you need to do. You need to produce a use case diagram, and it will show the functions of the app, not the processes, sorry, the functions. It also shows what the client does and what the user does. So this is focused around the different people and what it is that they do in the app, the functions that they will perform. And just to be totally clear, if you think about your banking app, you can go and you can move money around, you can pay for things. What you can't do is go into someone else's account and take their money. But there is someone who can do that, who works at the bank. So different users will have different levels of privilege, if you like, different admin rights, another way of looking at it. If you've ever been an admin on a website, you've got certain rights that others don't, all right? And to take that even further, if you think about SIMS, the school database that we use, teachers have got a different level of access to you. Well, you don't have access to it at all, but heads of year have got different access, so they can get hold of certain information. The head teacher is able to look at certain information that regular teachers can't. So it's all layered like that. All right, so let's go on to the next one. It's a use case diagram. It depicts the actors, and the actors in your case are going to be the client and the customer. The client being Justin, the customer being the students. And it'll be looking at the actions that they perform when they use the application. This is probably where things become more straightforward. So here's the how you do it segment. You've got the actors, you've got the client, and you've got the student. Now these are shown as stick people, and they needn't be as grand as the ones that I've got here. They can literally be stick people. And don't forget, if you want to get out a piece of paper and draw this out and photograph it, that's fine. There's no requirement for this to be done in an electronic form. It'll have to be submitted electronically in that it'll have to be a digital file. But if you want to draw this out, get your ruler out, get your colouring pens out and do it, it's absolutely fine. It hasn't got to be done on an application, although doing it on PowerPoint is quite straightforward. Right, so the actors, and those are the two actors in your case. Now, this is the rest of it. All actions are shown in those oval blue boxes. So those are the actions, the things that the characters, the actors, will do with the application. They'll make bookings. Some people will be able to view all the bookings. Some people can add a new account. Some people can delete a new account. But the important thing to remember, and I'm guessing you've worked out by now that the client, Justin's, on the left, and that the students, his students, the people learning to drive, are on the right-hand side. So the students will have access to certain functions, and Justin will have access to certain functions. For some of the functions, both actors will have access to them, but for some of the functions, only one actor will have access to them. And that's one of the key things that you're going to be trying to portray in this use case diagram. I'm going to pause there for about 10 seconds and have a sip of my water. Throw some questions at me. Could you just write yes if you understand, or no, or maybe? Let's have a yes, a no, or a maybe so far while I have a sip of water after talking to you about the use case diagram and what this thing actually shows. I can tell the lag is actually a bit longer today. Sometimes it's 6 seconds, sometimes it's a bit longer. So either you've all gone out sunbathing, or I'm going to assume that you have understood this. I will keep going. Put a yes, a no, or a maybe. Okay, it's taking about that long to come out. Good. Good. All right. Brilliant. Yeah, that's quite a good one, Hamza. There are various ways that you can produce this. Good. Everyone gets it. That is excellent. All right, so I shall move on. And by the way, I know it's a slightly weird way of doing it. I did ask everyone last time, do you prefer the Zoom meetings or do you prefer these live streams? People said the live streams, but don't forget, ask me in the questions or email me and I will get back to you if there's anything that you're struggling with. So here's the checklist when you make a use case diagram. Make a list of the actors. This is the how you go about making it. Make a list of the actors, which won't take you very long. Make a list of the functions that each actor may perform. So think about the app and think about what Justin will do and think about what the students will do and make a list of all the things they're going to do, the actions, the functions. Make stick people and label them, and then put the list of actions between them and then put a rectangle around each one, an oval. Actually, I put rectangle there, it should be an oval. Draw lines between the actors and actions only for the actions they perform. All right, that only is big for a reason, because that's something that people tend to often get wrong. So that pretty much sums up what needs to be done with the use case diagram. Now, don't say I don't treat you. I have got a quiz. And the question is this. Answers in the comments, please. What does a use case diagram show? Is it A, B, C, or D? And will you please put the answer in the comments? I know everyone is waiting, aren't they? We had this last time. This is the way everyone's going, oh, I don't want to get it wrong. Yes. Okay, so we've got different answers coming in here. We've got A for, let's just get rid of this. We've got A for process. We've got C. We've got functional requirements. We've got all sorts of use case diagram. So let's have a look at what the right answer is. What does the use case diagram show? It shows functional requirements, okay? So that was Josh, who I think was the winner there. The rest of you, I'm afraid, you get the screaming goat. So functional. So don't forget, linking up. So these are the 4 things that you need to show. So that's the first one. Use case diagram. Fairly straightforward thing. It is ridiculous how much shorter this task is than M2 and P2 that you've just done. This is a breath of fresh air. But what's also good is these diagrams, they are widely used in business. One of the things I love about this course is that this is actually really useful stuff. And when you go out in business, you will see these being used when they're identifying the issues and the problems and the pitfalls and what needs to be done with a different project. Right, so let's go on to the next one. And that's going to be another quiz. Let's be a bit faster with the answers this time. Which of these areas are not covered by a use case diagram? Which of these areas are not covered by a use case diagram? Is it A, the functions of the app? Is it B, the flow of data? Is it C, what the client will do? Or is it D, what the user will do? Ooh, we have a B straight away. Look at that. Let's have a bit of a well done for that. Indeed, who was that? Who said B? We've got lots of Bs. Who was the first B? The first B was... It was Keanu. Well done. Yeah. That was it. So with that, let's go on to the next slide. It was indeed correct. The flow of data is not covered. You guys are switched on. Right, next question. I've got 2 more or 1 more, I can't remember. I've got one of these little quizzes at the end of each section just to keep you on your toes, make you do some work rather than me doing it all at this end. So next question is this. What is the issue with this use case diagram? A, B or C, D in the comments, please. A, it doesn't show the functions. B, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a wonderful use case diagram. It is very pretty. It shows a fault with the app or the diagram. Or D, it only shows what students do. A, B, C or D. Could you please put your answers in the comments? Oh, you're slow to answer again. I think you're all hedging your bets just in case. Nobody wants... Oh, no, we're getting some answers now. We've got D. Oh, D, I'm afraid. I've been desperate to use that buzzer for about 10 minutes now. We've got A. It doesn't show the functions. Oh, okay. Only 2 left. Come on, someone else. No, that's still not the right answer. Come on, Jamil. Which one is it? We've only got 2 left. It's not A and it's not D. What else have we got? Come on. We've got B. Oh no. Which means what is the answer? This is a yeah, okay, finally. I think 4th attempt, Jamil. That was we did get there in the end. So listen, well, the issue here is that it's got the student and the client doing absolutely everything, okay, which is C. It's got them doing everything, which isn't right, because you don't want your student being able to delete accounts. You don't want your students being able to remove funds. That would be the quickest way to get out of business on earth. And the reason I put this one up there is that it's the most common fault that students make when they create a use case diagram is they get everything right and then they just draw one of these lines to everything, but actually it's to show what one actor does as opposed to another. All right, so that's the have I got another one? There we go. That was the answer there. So that's the use case diagram. So I'm going to move on to the next one. It looks like you all have a pretty good handle on what needs to be done for use case. So let's go on and look at the next of our diagrams, which is the flow chart. Here I have a very simple flow chart for you to get your head around, and Notice a couple of things. It's got a start and it's got an end, and they're called terminators. It's also got a decision box, and that's the yellow triangle. And notice that it's got a yes or a no there for the decision being a yes or a no. Just food for thought there. What if the hokey cokey really is what it's all about? We're all wasting our time. Let's not spend too long thinking about that, but it's a possibility that we might have to endure one day. So let's have a look at flowcharts. What does it do? It shows what the system looks like, and it shows how the system works. It shows who's involved, not to the extent that a use case diagram does, but you are, obviously there will be an actor, so you might be showing the route that a student takes through the system, for example, and you're going to need to produce this diagram for your application. So when the moderator looks at your work, he or she, and it's a she actually, will be expecting to see 4 diagrams with annotations. We've got use case out of the way. This one is about flowchart. Flowcharts do tend to cause a few problems because they're quite specific in the way they need to be set up, and this does matter. So these are the different symbols that will be in your flowchart. I've got subroutines in there. You don't need to do subroutines unless you want to. So if you want to show a subroutine for settings or for language settings, you can do that, but there's no need. What we're looking for is a flowchart that shows perhaps the student's way through making a booking and cancelling a booking. That's what you're going to be showing in this flowchart. So for example, logging on, do you have an account? Yes, no, make an account, pick a day, pick a time. Is the time available? Yes, make the booking. No, pick another one. Those sorts of things. So think about, I recommend get an app out that you would use for booking things and look at the processes involved. Or indeed, if you look at my videos on YouTube, I use the example of booking a table at a restaurant. This is very, very similar to that, okay? Except rather than booking a table at a restaurant, you're booking a slot for a driving lesson, and the food's not as good. So these are the flowchart symbols. You've got the terminator, one of those at the start and the end. You've got the input and the output, that's data going in and coming out of the system. You've got the processes that take place, what is done with the data. You've got a decision, have they got an account, yes or no, and then you go up and do something with yes and go along and do something with no, or down and do something with no. And then you've got subroutines, which are other parts of the programs. And very often, in situations like this, you'd use a subroutine and then you would create another flowchart to identify what happens as part of that subroutine. But you do need to use the right flowchart symbols. It does matter. They're expecting to see that you actually have an understanding of what these different symbols do. All right, so that's important. So let's run through these one by one. This is called a terminator, not as exciting as Arnold Schwarzenegger, no dystopian future, but you do have to have one of these oval shapes at the top and the bottom, and only 2 of them, and one says start and one says end. So you can almost put those in straight away because you have to have one at the start and you have to have one at the end. That is non-negotiable. If that's not there, it's not a flowchart. So that's what that signifies, those terminators, the start and the end of your flowchart. The next one is the decision box, and that's the diamond that you can see there on the top right hand side. So this is when you have a question. So inside the diamond box, you should have a question. In this case, does the user have an account? No, then register and go back up, and then when it asks the question again, yes, you do have an account, you log in, and then you start doing things. Every time that you use the internet, you go through this decision. Did you get your password correct? No. Try again. Do you want to reset your password? Yes. And then you go through that process, don't you? So everything that you do online is in some way linked to one of these decisions that you make. Crucially though, notice how the does user have an account triangle there. It's got a yes or a no. It's got 2 arrows coming out, or else it's not a decision, but it has to be a yes or a no. It can't be a yes, no, or maybe. It's going to be a yes or a no. And then there could be more options, but for your purposes, just think about a yes or a no. The yes or no has to be written along the lines. Again, otherwise you don't know where you're going. So the yes or the no has to be there, and that is your decision box. The next one is the process. This is an action that happens on the system. For example, making a booking, saving a booking, retrieving a booking from a database. In case this hasn't occurred to you, don't forget that when a student makes a booking, that booking is going to be saved somewhere on a database. So when a subsequent student goes to try to make a booking, it's going to open that file and look at it and compare the booking that the student's trying to make with the bookings that are made, and that's either going to give you a yes or a no. Yes, the slot's available. No, the slot isn't available. It's important that you get to grips with that idea, because once you understand that, producing one of these is actually quite straightforward. So the process is a rectangle, and it's simply an action that happens to the data on the system, a process, right? And then we go on to, that's it. I think I covered all of them actually. So flowchart rules. Start and a stop at the top and the bottom. They're called the terminators. The chart should flow from top to bottom. If you run the chart from left to right, it's not the end of the world, but a flowchart should flow downwards. That's why it's called a flowchart. Avoid going sideways unless you possibly can. I wouldn't make you redo it if it went sideways, but it should flow from top to bottom. No dead ends. No dead ends means that you'll get, that's the blue screen of death, effectively. It means that your application just stops working because it's got nowhere to go. Use arrowheads to show the direction of travel of the data or information or the processes that are taking place, and don't forget to put those yes/no decision boxes on the lines that protrude from the diamond. Okay, we now understand what this quiz is all about. Question is, in the comments please, what is wrong with this flowchart apart from, and in fact there's nothing wrong with that flowchart because I've shown you the wrong slide. So let's go on to the next one. Yeah, okay, it should have had the yes or no missing. It didn't, so that's my bad. Let's go on to this one. Oh, here we go, this one works. What is wrong with this flowchart? This is possibly the most common flowchart error that I'm given. So put your answers in the comments, please. What is wrong with that flowchart? Now come on, the rest of you, we can't have Jamil doing all of the answers here like last time. So what's wrong with this flowchart? There is a dead end. Look at Josh. He can have a magic chime for that. There we go. Well done, Josh. Yeah, there's a dead end. So you can't have dead ends in what Josh said. Yeah, too late. It's the first correct answer. So that's outstanding. That's exactly what we're looking for. This is a dead end, and you can't have dead ends in flowcharts, and that would be a problem. So let's go on and look at the next one. It's a dead end, that's correct, and that's what it should have been. That's how it should have looked, with a line drawn from that end box right back to there. You can't have orphaned boxes, it's just not on. Next question is, what is wrong with this flowchart? Come on, put an answer in there. Oh, you did, Tilly, sorry. I was looking at your comments which said no end, and then I realised what it actually meant, no end. You're right, there is no end. Well done, that's absolutely correct. The right answer. That is outstanding. Well done, Tilly, there is no end. There needs to be a terminator at the end of it. And there isn't there, and that's again one of the most common errors that people make with flowcharts. It's a really simple set of rules, but you can look at a flowchart and go, oh no, they haven't put yes or no on it, which is the one that I tried to do first but mucked up, or there's an orphaned box somewhere, that's bad, or there's no end or no start, or the flowchart makes no sense whatsoever. That's one I get more rarely, but as we said, no terminator there. So those are the three main things that people muck up. Other than that, it's getting confused between what these different boxes are. All right. So this one is slightly more challenging. So could you put these boxes in the right order? I want terminator, then inputs, output, then processes, decisions, and subroutines. I've cunningly written the answers down for this. So I'll just give you a minute or two to see if you can remember what these boxes are. So I'm looking for a series of letters in the comments. I'll give you a moment or two to do this. Bet you didn't know how to make you work so hard today. DCABE. Wow. Okay. That is you can also have a screaming goat. Just because I like the screaming goat, and we'll also have a bit of a choir if you will on Tilly. That's all for you, and Anushka. Also, the choir is for you. So that's outstanding. Good. Once you know what these, there is no spoon. No. Is the entire flowchart a whole dead end? Well, that's conceptually a very moving question. So that's exactly what it should have been. It should have been DCABE. So let's have a look at that. DCABE, Terminator, input-output with the parallelogram, which I really struggle to say. The processes, that's the rectangle, decision is the diamond, and that's what the subroutine is. You don't need to use one. You might want to use the subroutine to simply show that that's where it is, so the settings or whatever, but that is not a core requirement of this task. We don't expect you to go into that level of detail. They only want one level of detail. Right, so I think we are good. I'm going to pause here on this slide and ask you to do a yes, a no, or a maybe on data flow and on flowchart. Yes, no, maybe. Yes, I get it. Maybe I get some of it. I'm a bit confused about one or two bits, or no, this makes no sense. I wish I had stayed in bed. So please put a yes, a no, or a maybe in the comments. And while you're doing that, I will push on and show you the next bit, which is the data flow diagram. Okay, we've got a few yeses there. That is good. That is good. Data flow diagram conceptually isn't difficult, but it's probably something you haven't come across before. You can see how, in terms of appearance, it's quite similar to a flow diagram, but to a flow chart, but it does show slightly different data. Okay, we've got lots of yeses, so you're all fairly happy with that. That's brilliant. So if we look at this data flow diagram, I'll go through what it shows, but the most important difference here is that you see the arrows that run between the boxes. You've got the data that's flowing along those arrows, and that's really why it's called a data flow diagram. So can you see top left, we've got the customer symbol, and then coming out on the right hand side it's the order. So it's the data that's contained within the order that is sent to then for the order to be processed, and then the customer and order information, the data about the customer and the order information. I keep repeating data because all that you're doing is showing how the data flows around the system, and in some ways it mirrors what we've looked at before, but it is looking at the business through a slightly different lens. All right, so let's go on to the next one and have a look at what you need to do. So you've got to produce a diagram that describes an overview of data and functionality. Those are the two key things that it shows. And a data flow diagram is about the data and the journey that it takes within a given business process. It's about how data is processed, and it's about the inputs and the outputs, which is in some ways similar to the flowchart we just looked at. So you'll need to consider where data comes from, where it goes, and where it's stored. You'll also need to consider what the data is. And in terms of Justin's app, there's not a huge amount of data that you're moving around when you think about it. Think about customer details, think about times and dates and so on. Again, it's very similar to booking a meal at a restaurant. And if you watch the YouTube videos that I've got there, you can see that I've given you an example of that. So do go and look at those if you're struggling with data flow diagrams. There are lots of free apps out there that will give you a week's free trial where you can create one of these. And I have to say, I had way too much fun making one of these things. But again, you can use one of those, or you can buy one. There's really no need. You can also do it in PowerPoint quite easily. It's a bit more fiddly, but there are lots of free ways of doing it. Lucid Chart, I seem to remember, is quite a good one. So however you do it, you might want to sketch the thing out first, and then make it electronically. So it's a way of visualizing data, including the places the data visits and the people the data visits. So it's a good way of thinking about it. I'm talking about data flow diagrams as though it's settled and there's one way of doing it. And in fact, that's not the case. There are many different ways of producing a data flow diagram, but we're focusing on Gain and Sarsen's system. And that's Mr. Gain and Mr. Sarsen who invented this particular diagram. Excuse me. So just so you know, you don't need to remember that, but that is what we're going to be looking at today. It's a way of visualizing an information system and business processes. We could have focused on class diagrams, object diagrams, or entity diagrams. And if you are interested in understanding those diagrams, the book that you have, the textbook, the Cambridge Technicals textbook, has got those 3 diagrams in it. They aren't particularly difficult to understand, but I've chosen to do a DFD because I think it's actually more complex than those, but it's also more useful, and it's the one that you're most likely to come across when you go out to the big bad world and earn your own money. So let's look at what a data flow diagram focuses on. It's mainly about the movement of data, and it's about the people that the data interacts with. It's about the processes that take place, and you can see how it's taking a bit from a use case diagram, a bit from a flowchart, but it does give you a different view on the system that's being produced. It's looking at the files that are accessed, so that's something new. Okay, and the data stores as well. Which files are being opened? Do you remember I talked about how when someone makes a booking, in order to make the booking, the database, you'd have to go into the database, open up the file which says which slots are taken, compare the slot that somebody wants with the slots that are taken on that file, and then either make changes to the file and close it, or leave the file as it is and close it. So there's an awful lot going in. So we've got data stores and direction of flow of that information. But we are talking about data, all right? This is the data and the way that it moves around the systems. So those are the key areas here. Now this I have produced. I think I used Lucid Draw for this. The way that the arrows moved when you dragged them and was very exciting. I need to get out more. You can see here, this is the Cognotic Grill booking system. Now I've chosen to do this along the lines of a restaurant booking system for a table. And you'll see how this is so similar to what you need to do. And any booking system, because it's a simple booking system, isn't it? It's booking a time, it's booking a day. That's it. So you can see the entities. You've got the customer up there, and see the symbol used for the customer. Then you've got the search for table and time, which is the process down there. And you can see the overview here of, and notice also, can you see how the customer, the entity, gets repeated? So in a flowchart, you wouldn't repeat any boxes. Here you do. So the customer, or here you're allowed to. So if the customer needs to appear several times, that's okay. If the restaurant needs to appear several times, that is also okay. But that's a nice overview, and come back and have a look at this. And if you're really struggling, take this as your template and think about how you might adapt that to suit your needs to produce a data flow diagram for Justin. So let's run through the things you need to do. Please give your data flow diagram a title. I know I sound like a year 7 geography teacher, but please give it a title, because it really is important. So let's run through these different boxes and what they mean. The entity are the characters, the actors. So in this case, we've got the customer, and I think you've got the restaurant later on. Then you've got the processes. They don't have to be green, but notice that it's a rounded rectangle and it's got that line that runs kind of a third of the way down the top. So that's a process with some kind of calculations taking place, a search, booking, that sort of thing. They're all processes, exactly the same as the flowchart. Then we've got a data store or a file, and that's the bookings data store or the bookings file that will be in the database. And that's where the information is going to be saved, and that will be a file that will be opened and it will be amended depending upon if someone cancels a booking. The file will get opened, that slot will get deleted, the file will get saved and closed, and then when someone goes in again, they can open it and book it. I hope this is making sense, but this is what this diagram shows, and you can see it is different in many ways from the the data itself. Okay, this is important. If you look at the blue arrow coming out of the left-hand side, that's what you should be focusing on, not the one in the middle, which is the one that I looked at here. But that big, fat blue arrow, which is pointing to name and email, this is the most common thing that people get wrong, is they forget to put the data flowing between the boxes. So you draw your line, and then either above it or below it, doesn't matter, you write down the actual individual bits of data which are going to be flowing between these different boxes. All right. Checklist. Everyone loves a checklist. Make a list of data that's going to move around the system. And there's really not much. Think about a restaurant booking system and you're most of the way there. Make a list of the actors, the entities. Make a list of the data stores or data store. Make a list of the processes that take place. It might be that this checklist doesn't work for you and you just need to start drawing it out and then adding to it. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for you. Write down a list of what happens in what order with the different elements. Oh, Lucid Chart was what I used. I couldn't remember. So Lucid Chart was the one that I used. And I think that gave me a free week or two's trial. And then they pester you forever until you block them. Have a free site that makes it simple. There we go. Make sure your name and symbols, make sure that you name your symbols and write the data along the lines. So that's the kind of checklist for your data flow diagram. You are doing well. I'm covering sort of a week's worth of teaching in an hour. But I think probably I'm going to push on, get this one on wireframe done, take any questions, and then we are done. 42 minutes. Right. Let's see if I can get this done in 10. A quiz. Which of these do not figure in data flow diagrams? Entities, processes, files that are accessed, timelines, data stores, direction of flow, or data that moves around the bees, or the system as it is there. So which of those do not figure in a data flow diagram? Answers in the comments, please. Oh, we have an answer. Josh has got it right. It is timelines. Well done. That is exactly what doesn't figure. And of course, we know that timelines are what appears in a Gantt chart. So when you produce your Gantt chart, that's what appears in the Gantt chart. It's timelines. So that is the data flow diagrams. Oh, done and dusted. I've got another question here. What info should be... this is an easy one. Okay, I hadn't quite finished my quiz. I got excited there. What information should be next to arrows between the boxes? What information should be... So the arrows that run between the boxes, what is it that should be written, the text that should be on those arrows that run in between the boxes? Just pop that into the comments for me, please. Oh, you've said processes. I just love pressing the wrong button. I've got to do it again. You only got it wrong once though, Jamil, to be fair. It is the data. That is excellent. Well done, Josh. It is the data that flows. And again, it's the most common thing people muck up is they forget to write in the data. All right, that's the data. Good, well done, Anushka. It is the data that flows between them. And that's what needs to go into it. The individual chunks of data. Right. If you've got any issues on anything I've covered, put it in the comments now. I'm going to crack on and get wireframe done, and hopefully I can finish this in about 5 minutes. The wireframe's the easiest one, which is why I've left it until last. So we've done 3 so far. Done the use case diagram, we've done the flow chart, and we've done the data flow diagram. I imagine the first 2 you kind of knew what to do. The data flow is something that's a bit new, but it's a variation on a theme. The wireframe is dead easy. And in fact, I could just say, look at that picture, and that's pretty much what you need to do. Although that is actually to do with a different business question. That's a customer relationship manager. But let's look at the wireframe. I can't help this as someone who enjoys languages, that this wireframe actually originally came from 3D models, which would be produced as wireframes like this. So if you're a car manufacturer, you produce a wireframe, and it's because they, rather than rendering the entire thing, they use those what look like wires to actually demonstrate an object. All right, it has the appearance of wires. So for what you need to do, the wireframe is a mock-up of how the screen will look on your finished app. It doesn't have to work, it doesn't have to be functional, it doesn't need to include all the detail, but it should include the basic layout of your screen and where the different components within your screen are going to lie. Here is an example of wireframes on a phone, and you're going to be after something similar to that. So the easiest way to do it would be to go and find an image of a phone, of an iPhone, and then use that, and then start to play around with different blocks of color and different blocks of text, and think about where your buttons are going to be. And the more time that you spend doing this, the better for you, because then when it comes to doing a later task, you will already have produced your working version. All right, so you're asked to produce a prototype in one of the later tasks, and if you get your prototype sorted out this time and do the entire thing in PowerPoint, you can have a bit of time off in about 2 weeks' time. But equally, even if you just get one good design done, it'll make doing the prototyping really easy afterwards. But that is the sort of thing that we're looking for. I mean, this has got nothing to do with the problem that you're solving, but that's what a wireframe looks like. So checklist. Make a list of all the functions that you need to include in your app. Might want to run through what you've done for P2 to have a list of functions that your app is going to do. The most difficult part is actually thinking about how many screens you want to run your app across. If you do more screens, it means more clicking, but you end up increasing the clarity of your app. If you do fewer screens, it means that there's less clicking, but that it's actually the information could be a bit jumbled and the screens are a bit too busy and it's hard to figure things out and it's not nice to use. So there is a sweet spot, which of course people spend their careers working on, trying to make apps that are pleasant to use. Use PowerPoint or Photoshop or a pen and paper to create your design. It doesn't matter. If you use pen and paper, please use a ruler. Your design should include everything in P2 and conform to what you've said you're going to do in M2. Your wireframe should be the shape of a phone, because that's what it's going to be on, or a Kindle Fire or whatever else you've said you're going to put it on. And for the purpose of this, do at least 2 screens. I'm going to be asking you for your prototype to do more like 5-6 screens. So the point is, and obviously once you make one, there's going to be a similar look across many of the screens. The information on the screens will be different, but once you create one, that can be your template for then going and creating different screens. So that's everything that you need to know for doing wireframe diagrams, which brings us on 48 minutes and 39 seconds onto the question section. We have covered 4 different diagrams that you need to produce this week. Today is Tuesday. To be honest with you, in terms of how much do you need to do, each of these diagrams will take up a page or half a page, and I think this is all quite achievable within a day. What you will find is that if you actually do a planning process and go back to those checklists and write out all the different information that you need, that might take you maybe an hour, and then creating the diagrams afterwards is pretty straightforward. So I am going to sit here for a few seconds and see if any of you have got any questions about anything. It hasn't got to be related to P3 necessarily, but if it is, all the better. I'm opening up my email to see if any of you have emailed me, and if any of you have got anything that you would like to ask me. I've not had much through so far. No, nothing in from you guys. Is there anything else that you would like to ask me? In that case, I'm going to ask you to put a yes, a maybe, or a no for whether or not we have achieved the goal today. Do you understand what you have to do? Let's have a yes, let's have a no, and let's have a maybe. And once I've had an answer from everyone, then I think we can definitely call this a day. Okay, we've got a yes from Josh. We've got a yes from Aaron. We've got a yes from Tilly. We've got a yes from Jamil. All right, guys. Have a fabulous sunny Tuesday afternoon. I will do one of these on Friday, by which time you should have had a chance to feedback on your M2 and to get this totally finished. So, guys, have a fabulous sunny Tuesday afternoon, and I will see you all on Friday. Bye-bye, guys. Nice to see you.